week 3 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I looked at this week. The first guy, Alec Bohm of the Philadelphia Phillies. So Bohm, we know he's a solid hitter. We know he's a former top prospect for this Philly team. The only problem with him has been the defensive problems. But if he's so bad on defense, they might as well DH him, even though I know Nick Castellanos and Schwarber ain't great fielders as well here for this Philly team. So far in the season for Bohm, only 28 at-bats, 1 home run, 9 RBIs, 6 runs scored, 393 average though, and a 417 on base. So last season wasn't a great year for Bohm, but so far he's off to the hot start, and he's just got to get better on defense and hit the breaking ball a little better. But right now, still available in a bunch of fantasy leagues here is Bohm at 49%. I would go out there and get him. So the last few games for him, April 19th at the Rockies, 0 for 3 with a run. April 20th at the Rockies, 2 for 4, a homer, 3 RBIs. April 22nd versus the Brewers, 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs. April 23rd versus Milwaukee, 0 for 3. And April 24th versus Milwaukee in that ball game, 1 for 4 for Bohm. So right now, he's available in a lot of leagues. He's hitting the baseball great, even though I know it's a small sample size with only 28 at-bats, and his on-base to batting average ain't a great ratio. But Bohm's a pretty good hitter, in my opinion, and a guy only in his second season in the league here. So right now, I think he's going to play decent baseball. And if you need third base or a utility hitter, he's definitely one of the top hitters this week I've looked to add on the waiver wire. The next hitter I looked to add this week here is Sheldon Neuse of the Oakland Athletics. So the Athletics here, they blew up the whole roster in the offseason, trading pretty much all their best players on the team. And now next man up and young guys step up. So on the season here for Sheldon Neuse, 14 for 45, 1 home run, 8 RBI, 6 runs scored, a stolen base, a 311 batting average, and a 380 on bases. So far, he's playing good baseball for this Oakland Athletic team. And he's available in 90% of fantasy leagues, and he's got good versatility, qualifying at second and third base. So over the last few games here for Neuse, April 20th versus Baltimore, 2 for 4. April 21st versus Baltimore, 3 for 4, run, 2 RBIs. April 22nd versus Texas, 0 for 3. April 23rd versus Texas, 0 for 4. And April 24th versus Texas, 1 for 3. So right now, Neuse, he's one of the table setters for this Oakland Athletic lineup, even though this Oakland team is probably going to be one of the worst teams in the league here, losing 90 to 100 games this season here, even though they do surprise a lot of people with no names. And so far, Neuse, he's been a guy getting on base well on top of this Oakland Athletic team lineup, and a guy that could help fantasy owners. Right now, I know he's more of a deeper league ad, but he's definitely a guy, if you need a second or third base help, who could get on base and score some runs, is a decent ad this weekend. The next guy's Jock Peterson of the San Francisco Giants. So Jock Peterson's off to a great start this season, picking up where he left off with the Atlanta Braves last year. And already 5 home runs for Peterson on the season, 8 RBIs, a stolen base, a 327 batting average, and a 360 on base percentage with 9 runs scored. So Peterson, he's going out there. He's hitting for power for this Giant team. And he was definitely an underrated signing in the offseason. And surprisingly, only getting a 1-year deal as well from the Giants. So the last few games here for Peterson, April 19th at the Mets in a doubleheader, 1 for 7 with a homer. April 20th at the Mets, 2 for 4. A run and RBI. April 21st at the Mets, 0 for 4. April 23rd at Washington, 2 for 4 with a rib. And April 24th at Washington, 3 for 3 with 2 home runs and 3 RBIs with 3 runs scored. So right now he's going out there, like I mentioned, playing great baseball is Jock Peterson. And the only thing is he's going to get in some slumps. He's going to strike out a lot and not play many games versus lefties. But right now, you should go out there and definitely get him. He's one of the top-ranked hitters in fantasy baseball. And already, like I mentioned, with 5 home runs on the season with the high batting average. So while the iron's hot with Peterson, go out there and get him. And he's available in 63% of fantasy leagues. The next hitter I looked at this week's Nathaniel Lowe of the Texas Rangers. So far, Lowe off to a good start. Last season he was too, and then he fizzled out a couple months in. So on the season here for Lowe, 1 home run, 9 RBIs, 5 runs scored, 55 at-bats with 21 hits, a 382 average, and a 424 on-base percentage. So far for Lowe, I'll give him some credit. He's cutting down on the strikeouts a little, and it's definitely helping his on-base percentage and batting average, where he's white hot so far to start the season. I don't know if it's going to continue because last season, like I mentioned, he got off to the big start as well. So the last few games here for Lowe, April 19th at Seattle, 1-for-4. April 20th at Seattle, 2-for-4. April 21st at Seattle, 3-for-5, a run and a rib. April 22nd at Oakland, 2-for-3, a homer, 2 RBIs. April 23rd at Oakland, 0-for-4. And April 24th at Oakland, 1-for-4. So right now, he's hitting the ball great. He's getting on base a lot, and he's changing his approach, cutting down on the strikeouts. So right now, while he's out there in fantasy leagues at 47%, I would give Lowe an ad this week here. The next guy's Thairo Estrada of the San Francisco Giants. So Estrada, versatile infielder, no doubt about it, for fantasy owners here. Second short and outfield, he qualifies here in fantasy league. So Estrada on the season, he's got 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 13 runs scored, a .250 batting average, and a .297 on base. So right now, I know the on base to batting average ratio isn't all that great, but with his versatility and him getting an everyday opportunity with the San Francisco Giant team, he's definitely a guy that's worthy of an ad. And right now, he's only available in 43% of leagues. So the last few games here for Estrada, April 19th at the Mets, 2-for-8 with a run in a doubleheader. April 20th at the Mets, 0-for-3 with a stolen base. April 21st at the Mets, 1-for-3 with a rib. April 22nd at Washington, 2-for-4 with a run. April 23rd at Washington, 1-for-4 with a run. And April 24th at Washington, 1-for-3 with a run and an RBI. So right here, he's been hitting 1-for-3, 1-for-4 mostly. But with the versatility and him playing decent baseball to start the season, he's definitely a solid pickup this week here as Estrada. And I would go out there and get him in your fantasy leagues before it's too late. The next guy is J.P. Crawford of the Seattle Mariners. So Crawford, he signed a nice extension in the offseason and former one of the top prospects in the Philly system. It just didn't pan out over there, but he's found new life here with the Seattle Mariners team, and he's playing great baseball on the season here for Crawford. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 8 runs scored, a stolen base, a .340 average, and a .460 on base in 50 at-bats here. So right now he's going out there and playing great baseball. And a guy who's playing at a weak shortstop position in fantasy definitely holds a lot of value. And I mentioned him last week as an ad, but this week he's a must-add that he's been a hitting machine for this Mariners team. And right now he's available in 68% of fantasy leagues. So the last few games here for Crawford, April 19th versus Texas, 1-for-4. April 20th versus Texas, 0-for-3 with an RBI. April 21st versus Texas, 1-for-4, a homer, 3 RBIs. April 22nd versus Kansas City, 2-for-3 with a run. April 23rd versus Kansas City, 2-for-5, a homer, 2 ribbies. And April 24th versus Kansas City, 2-for-4 with an RBI. So right here, the last 3 games here, he's had multiple hit games, is J.P. Crawford. And he's definitely a guy I would go out there and get before it's too late. Because right now he's ranked number 15th in fantasy baseball. And he's white hot with the bat as Crawford. So definitely go out there and get him. The next hitter is Brandon Marsh of the Los Angeles Angels. So Marsh a little banged up with an illness and a stomach bug. But right now he should be back in a day or two. And he's been a good ball player so far to start the season for this Angel team. 2 home runs, 13 RBIs already. A stolen base, 7 runs, .306 average, and a great .400 on base. So right now he's a speedster, is Marsh, even though he's batting in the middle of the lineup, anywhere from 58 in this Angel team. But right now he's been added in 24% of fantasy leagues, and he's still available in 67% of leagues. April 18th at Houston, 1-for-4 with a run. April 19th at Houston, 1-for-2, 2 RBIs. April 20th at Houston, 2-for-2, a run and a rib. April 22nd, 0-for-1 in a pinch hitting appearance versus Baltimore. April 23rd versus Baltimore, 1-for-4 with a homer and 2 RBIs. So right now, he's getting on base. He's hitting the baseball. I know the power hasn't been all that great for Marsh here, but right now, as a guy who can hustle and get on base and help your fantasy team, he's good as either a backup on your bench or a guy is your third outfield or utility position, depending how your team is structured. So right now, Marsh is a good ad this week. The next hitter I look to add is Josh Naylor of the Cleveland Guardians, and there where he's got off to a good start so far this season here for the Guardian team. 1 home run, 5 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a .476 batting average, and a .500 on base percentage. I know it's only 23 at-bats here for Naylor, but he's definitely a guy to keep an eye on here And over the last few games here for Naylor, he's been playing every day. April 20th versus the White Sox in a doubleheader, 2 for 4 with a run and a rib. April 21st versus the White Sox, 2 for 4, a run and 2 RBIs. April 22nd at the Yankees, 2 for 4. April 23rd at the Yankees, 2 for 3 with a homer, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored. And April 24th at the Yankees, 0 for 4. So right here, he's getting an everyday opportunity. He's got some fantasy versatility as well. First in outfield qualifying that. And he's available right now, 94% of fantasy leagues. So right here, if you need a guy who could play first base in the outfield, as long as he's playing pretty much every day, he's definitely a guy to take a shot at because he is hitting 450. I know it's a small sample size, but he's definitely off to the hot start. The next hit is Nico Hoerner of the Chicago Cubs, so he qualifies at second and shortstop is Hoerner. And last season, we saw some decent flashes out of him in a cup of coffee in the second half of the season with the Cubs. So on the season here, 1 home run, 8 RBIs, 4 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, 327 batting average, and a 340 on base. I know he's a free swinger, but the funny thing is he puts the ball in play and he don't strike out a lot. Only 7 strikeouts in 49 at-bats, which is pretty good here for Nico Hoerner. And he's available right now in 91% of fantasy leagues, and he's a guy pretty much playing every day as well for the Chicago Cub team. April 19th versus Tampa, 1 for 4 with a run and a rib. April 20th versus Tampa, 0 for 1. April 21st versus Pittsburgh, 1 for 3 with a stolen base. April 22nd versus Pittsburgh, 3 for 4. And April 23rd, he had a monster game, 4 for 5 with a run and 3 RBIs and a 21-0 victory. Yeah, you heard that correct, a 3-touchdown victory for the Chicago Cubs. So Hoerner with good versatility in the middle infield. And last season, we saw him in 150 at-bats, hit 302 with only 25 strikeouts. So he's definitely not a fluke. He's definitely a guy that he's not going to hit for home runs, I know, but he's going to get on base. He's going to hit for average, and he's a guy that can score a decent amount of runs as well for this Cub team. So I would give Hoerner an ad this week, and the final hitter I look to add this week's another Chicago Cub, who I mentioned last week is an ad. And this guy, he's going out there, and he's showing some good pop for this Cub team and fantasy owners, and he's very versatile as well, qualifying at first, third, and outfield. So Wisdom, he's got added in 20% of fantasy leagues from last week to this week. The only thing with him is a high strikeout rate, and he's not going to have the highest batting average, but he's definitely going to show power. So far this season, 2 home runs, 11 RBIs, 9 runs scored, with a 250 average and a 333 on base. But last season, he did have 28 home runs in only 338 at-bats. So if he could get 400 or 500 at-bats, this guy definitely has 30 home run potential here, is Patrick Wisdom of the Chicago Cubs. And the last few games here for Wisdom, April 18th versus Tampa, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs. April 19th versus Tampa, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs. April 21st versus Pittsburgh, 1 for 2 with a run. April 22nd versus Pittsburgh, 0 for 2 with a run. April 23rd versus Pittsburgh, 1 for 4, 2 runs and RBI. And April 24th versus Pittsburgh, 1 for 4. So right here, yes, he's going to have a lot of strikeouts, but he's definitely worth it, in my opinion, with the power he brings and the versatility, and a guy who could get hot in 1 month and definitely help carry your fantasy team. So that's a few hitters I look to add here for week 3 of the fantasy baseball season.